Summer 2018. Mason just joined 2b2t for the first time ever. After sitting in queue for over an entire day, a friend gave him some basic stuff. And now, he's ready for some PvP. A player comes into vision, armed to the teeth. Although he seems busy, distracted sorting his shulker. Mason knows this is a unique opportunity to get his hands on some perfect gear. Without hesitation, he attacks. But as soon as he comes into fighting distance, the player instantly turns. One hit, and Mason lies dead on the ground. What just happened? The 2b2t community is famous for using hacks. But this was something else. Bewildered, he checks the chat. Slain by Alpha stacked 32Ks. Using a hack client himself, the weapon enchantments are visible to him. The sharpness level is over 32,000. And the same goes for every other death message. Everyone in spawn is wielding swords which kill in one hit. Mason doesn't know, but he joined 2b2t during its most deadly period yet. The era of 32k super weapons. To understand the chaos in summer 2018, we have to go back in time, way before the situation spiraled out of control. The year is 2013, and the server's admin, Housemaster, is searching for help within the 2b2t community. He wants to prevent players from accessing the nether roof, as well as fix some other minor issues. Skilled coders are needed, and some are willing to help. In December, the players iTrist and Pyrobyte get into contact with the admin. They write a plugin which fixes the nether roof issue. Housemaster runs it, and everything works properly. But not everything is as it seems. The two didn't act out of charity. Within the code, there are hidden lines, making them nearly as powerful as the admin himself. iTrist and Pyrobyte are still able to access the nether roof themselves, as long as they're writing an entity. One of the other issues the plugin was meant to fix related to renaming items in anvils. They did that too, but were now able to create negatives. By adding /0xa7 to any item name, the number value would turn negative, and negatives have a special feature. They're infinite. Never-ending potions, building blocks, and of course TNT. These and many more were never meant to exist, but were now introduced into Minecraft Anarchy. Although, even more important than that, they added an auto-updater. This meant, whenever they wanted to add something new, Pyro and iTristan were now able to adjust the code however they wanted, without Housemaster knowing about it. They abused that, and soon were able to teleport, leaving their now famous signs at the world border, change game mode, and most importantly for our story, spawn in hacked items, the first super weapons in 2b2t history. These were insanely powerful tools, enchanted to level 32,767. If you're wondering why this specific number, because of the way Minecraft is programmed, it is the highest positive value possible, without forcing an error which would turn the number negative again. That's why they are commonly referred to as 32Ks. These weapons could be anything. Swords with knockback so high, enemies would get kicked for flying. Looting enchantments that dropped enough items to fill double chest after double chest from a single mob. Armor with thorns that would take down any attacker instantly. And of course, 32k swords that could kill your opponents with a single strike. Although it is unclear when Housemaster found out about it exactly, since iTrist and Pyrobyte abused their backdoor access so heavily, it didn't last very long. However, after the plugin got removed, 32Ks stayed in the game, but they were guarded carefully. For the longest time, these super weapons would only be owned by Pyrobyte and iTrist respectively, unknown to the public, ready to be used. Months passed, years went by, and nothing happened. Just like bases, 2b2t regularly sees the rise of new groups, while others fall. But in early 2016, something unprecedented shaked the server's community. many of the most famous players would join forces to combine their powers. Legends like Pop-Bob, Jared 2013, Kinurana, as well as many others came together. This gave birth to the Tyranny, which in later years would be better known as Nerds Incorporated. Housing the server's most skilled hackers and griefers, the group is nowadays famous for things like the no-com exploit, which allowed them to track players in real time. That way, they found thousands of bases and hiding spots. No one was safe. But let's not dive too deep into that. No-com, it's worth its own video. Most important for our story, one of the Tyranny's members I didn't mention before was Tristan. In the wake of the group's creation, Jared 2013 and Taylor 112 designed a base, the Archive. This was a giant bedrock sphere with a massive stash inside. They stored everything there. Apart from common things, it also included illegal items, such as barrier blocks. And of course, 32Ks would also find their way into the stash. I'm not saying Tristan and Pyrobyte handed these weapons out across the server or anything like that. At this point, they were still safely hidden in the server's most elite group's main storage facility. But you know how it goes. Before, with only the two of them, there were merely rumors about their existence. Now, with more players getting involved, 32Ks would slowly start to spread. Even for a base on 2b2t, the Archive was very short-lived. It faced destruction as inevitable as anything could be on the server, because Housemaster himself was coming to destroy it. Although before that, something else happened. Tristan would upload some 2b2t region files to a public account. Not the exact coordinates, but enough for Chainslaw to discover them. Must have been karma, because at that time, the Tyranny made countless enemies by griefing a lot of bases. Well, now they were able to return the favor. Chainslaw, together with Jack the Ripper, which had already lost a couple builds during the Tyranny's destruction, headed out to raid the Archive. Approaching the Bedrock Sphere, they were stunned. Something like that shouldn't exist in vanilla Minecraft. It showed once again how powerful of a group the Tyranny had become, as they were able to do things others could only dream of. Inside, the two discovered all the illegal items from the previous second, as well as the currently active third backdoor. If you're wondering, yes, Tristan had fooled Housemaster once more, and again, was in the possession of powers like the admin himself. Although, with that much evidence surfacing during the war, not for much longer, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Searching through the stash, they would also get their hands on something truly special. Weapons with insane enchantment levels. That's right, 32Ks had made their way into the hands of rival players. After stealing as much as possible from the base, Chainslaw and Jack would leave again. But their raid didn't go unnoticed. As Tristan found out about it, he searched the chests, and to his horror, he found his nightmares confirmed. Some of the super weapons were missing. And he knew a fight with both sides using them would be devastating for everyone involved. To prevent this from happening, Tristan did the only remaining thing possible in this situation. He told Housemaster himself about the existence of super weapons on the server. In late April, the admin stepped in, installing the illegal items plugin. It would revert any weapon enchanted too high back to its maximum allowed level. Sharpness 32,767 would become 5 again, merely a fraction of its former power. Housemaster also deleted the Archive, and I mean that for real. Using World Edit, he wiped the entire base from the server, including the stash with all its items. This was one of the admin's rare interventions into 2b2t's anarchy, but back then he deemed it necessary. With the illegal items plugin installed, the case should be closed. 32Ks are gone forever, right? Not really. Yes, the plugin would revert any of them back to normal levels, but only if used. In other words, as long as players kept them safe in their vaults, super weapons stayed in the game. All of this happened in April 2016, a lot to take in. After that, things quieted down for more than a year. Then, in 2017, around April Fools, Housemaster forgot to renew the illegal items plugin. It just so happened that at the same time, Kinorana abused his SSH key to bring 32Ks back. If you wonder what that means, I'm not a programmer, but from what I've read, he hacked into the actual machine running the 2b2t's server itself. No clue if a deeper penetration than that is even possible. Anyway, he created another set of super weapons. Some might have also come from personal player stashes, filled with the old archives leftovers. But contrary to Itrus and Pyrobyte back in the day, their new owners were ready to use them. In May, Kinorana, alongside Jack the Ripper and Alpha Computer, headed to Spawn to kill other players. A couple days later, Alpha Computer did the same together with the famous YouTuber Fit, which streamed the entire thing. Remember, all the drama over a year ago, or even before that, did only involve a small amount of people. But now, at Spawn, and especially with Fit's stream, 32Ks were on full display, and everyone could witness their immense power with their own eyes. With that much attention, Housemaster was quick to disable them again, although once more, only used once. Now, we enter a time of great uncertainty. Not just for us, as the sources don't reveal much about that time, but also for players, as 32Ks became usable, then unusable, then usable, and so on. This cycle continued for quite a while. As said, not entirely sure why this was the case, but keep in mind that still only a select few players had access, and therefore they weren't meta defining or anything like that. So we can probably see this as more or less lazy attempts from Housemaster to patch these weapons. And it makes sense. The 2b2t players had seen Fit's stream. Yeah, of course there was some outrage, but I'm sure that Housemaster was already used to being unpopular within the community. And for a thing that didn't impact the majority of the player base, why bother too much? One thing is for sure though, 32K weapons might not have been used that much, but they were multiplied. Over the next year, 2b2t would see some of the most powerful dupes in its entire history. Things like the crafting or donkey dupe would fill one stash after another. The reason why these duplication glitches were so powerful, shulkers were recently added to the game. With them, players could duplicate items much faster, and in case of the crafting dupe, even stack normally unstackable items like swords up to 64 at a time. I want you to let that sink in for a bit. Where in previous dupes, you would just duplicate one item at a time, players were now able to dupe an entire shulker of stacked items. So instead of one, they could create 1728 copies at once. This is absolutely insane, and the reason for all the chaos that was about to take over the server. While it's not debated what happened next, some sources differ on the exact timing, and I did my best putting everything into a coherent storyline, mainly relying on the 2b2t wiki for this part, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. For our last chapter in the story, we will now enter the time of anarchy, which is obviously quite fitting for 2b2t. It is June 2018, and players fight with crystals, as always since the server updated to 1.9. With the ability to craft them, they became the mainstream choice for most PvPers. A bit expensive, yeah, but it just needed a couple, and then duplication would do the rest. If you have never been in such a fight before, just imagine it like combat with instantly exploding TNT, and with automated hack clients, every player is able to place 10 plus of these bombs each second. It is at this time though that Alpha Computer, which we had already met earlier, discovered an exploit that would change everything. He was able to make 32Ks usable in a reliable way, and here's how it worked. By placing a shulker on top of a hopper, you could dispense a 32K sword into your hotbar, and with Kill Aura enabled, you would then be able to kill everyone in range. This workaround more or less fooled the illegal items plugin. Please remember, as of now, super weapons were still only in the hands of a few people. But as said before, these individuals, thanks to previous dupes, were now sitting on gigantic stashes of exactly these items. Alpha knew his time had come. Seeing the opportunity, he started selling 32Ks for real-life money, and people lined up to buy them. It didn't take much time, and every major group had access to these weapons, while Alpha Computer made a small fortune, as some of them sold for up to $2,000. But as you might expect, this didn't last long, and give it a couple more weeks, including duplication of course, and 32Ks were everywhere. Players like Hexer Elite gave them away for free at spawn. Now, they were basically worthless, as they were more abundant than any other illegal item at this point. For trading I mean, but obviously not for combat. Each strike would kill or at least pop a totem of your opponent, so players were basically forced to use them, because everyone who didn't wouldn't stand a chance. We are now back to the beginning of our story, with total chaos all over the entire server. As super weapons had become the overwhelmingly dominant way to PvP, the race began. Developers of hack clients scrambled, trying to give their users an advantage over others. Modules like Auto32K would automate the process of placing the sword into your hotbar, making it even easier to kill opponents. But as it always is in combat, the shield side of the equation evolved as well. The fittingly named hack Anti32K targeted any hoppers within a set distance to prevent enemies from even drawing their swords in the first place. Many players would also carry over half their inventories in totems, trying to avoid sudden death at spawn. With that much exposure, you would think that Housemaster quickly swooped in and patched super weapons out of their existence. I mean, let's be real. The couple players that got killed back in May 2017 in Fit's livestream were nothing compared to this. So surely it would do something about it. Right? Right? Hey House!
Your server's on fire.
To be honest, I have no idea what took him so long. Maybe the issue was hard to fix, as Alpha Computer's exploit bypassed the illegal items plugin in a unique way. Or maybe he thought, compared to only a few players wielding 32Ks, as it was before, this resembled perfect anarchy. Anyway, Housemaster would eventually do something, but not until the server had suffered almost 1.5 years of total chaos, as it took him till December 20th, 2019, to finally patch them once and for all. This time, 32Ks would be reverted when entering the player's inventory in any way, including shulkers. So as long as this plugin keeps running, it is safe to assume that super weapons will never make their way back into the 2b2t combat meta. Although it is very likely that they do still exist on the server, in unloaded chunks or chests that have never been opened since 2019. And who knows, as the saying goes, 2b2t players will always find a way.